Well, I'm Jerry Horton, and I am the CO and IT and video supervisor here at Blue Valley Telecommunications. I'm Kansas born and bred, lived most of my life in Kansas and all of it in the Midwest. I've spent the bulk of my working career in telecommunications, but I've also done healthcare. Agriculture is where I started. Agriculture informatics specifically, and I'll get into that here in a second. And also banking and just about every other industry, just like all of us do around here. My experience with agriculture came right after I got out of tech school, and I immediately went into the measurement technology industry, which was basically feed truck scales. And that's real mobility right there. Not a lot of bandwidth, but real mobility. Did a lot of stuff in packing plants with scales, and did a lot of stuff with writing programming for the feed industry. So I've been around agriculture for a long time and seen the growth of information technology and informatics. According to the USDA Census of Agriculture in 1997, yes, it's dated, is the earliest or the latest I could find, there are 1.9 million farms in the United States. Over 69% of those farms have livestock as well. Now, if you compare that to the average broadband usage in the United States currently, and this is information from this month, 86% of all people between 18 and 65 use the internet, and generally that's broadband. 59% of 65 and older also use that. I'm going to say that those numbers are pretty applicable to farming, even though, as Dr. DeRucci pointed out, there are a lot of industries where maybe necessarily broadband, as telecommunications generally thinks of it, is not truly available. So what we've had over the last several years is this gigantic explosion of technology over into agriculture. I can remember when I first installed a scale on a grain cart. That was a huge deal. Nobody had ever even thought of it before. And needless to say, the first couple of experiments didn't work all that well. The grain cart wasn't engineered well for it. But in advance of that, then we've had GPS, where basically you drive your tractor or your combine with an iPad. We have monitoring not only of the equipment, but also of the plants. And GIS has been a major component of all of this. And this has been steadily growing with increasing rapidity over the last 20 years or so. The problem is that all of the data from all of these systems is in great big silos. We have a 4-hour download for a tractor or a planter over here, and then we've got data coming in from, oh, okay, I've used this much feed over the last year, or here's my fuel cost, and here's what it costs to run an irrigation engine. All of this information is just scattered all over the place. Many tractors and combines already use GPS satellites, and just to plant ever straighter rows, while farmers, freed from steering, monitor progress on iPads or other tablet computers, now common in tractor cabs. The same machinery collects data on crops and soil, but many farmers have haphazardly managed the information, scattered in piles of paperwork in their office, or stored in thumb drives clattering around in pickup ashtrays. The data were turned over by hand for piecemeal analysis, and that's the point I want to get to. Where we're at with agriculture is we're on the cusp of an industry buzzword called big data, something that Google and Amazon have used for years. Data gathered from tons of different sources, collated, and actually used to create decisions, good business and marketing decisions. Kenneth Cukier, who was the author of Big Data, A Revolution That Will Transform How We Live, Work, and Think, define big data as the collecting and applying of data in ways we never have before. The implications of big data are that we can also take this gargantuan amount of data and now apply it to problems we never could before. This quantitative shift leads us to a qualitative shift. More is not more, it's different. Now, the seed companies and the manufacturers, various vendors, have jumped on this bandwagon early because they've been in the big data business for a very, very, very long time. Monsanto, for instance, has a data-driven planting advice that they can give to farmers. It could increase worldwide crop production by about $20 billion per year, or about 1/3 the value of last year's U.S. crop. The technology could help improve the average corn harvest to more than 200 bushels an acre from the current 160 bushels an acre, companies say. Such a gain would generate an extra $182 per acre in revenue for farmers. Big data puts augmented reality at our disposal. We need the tools and technology that computerization has brought to agriculture to be able to profitably drive production and marketing decisions. Now, there are commercial solutions available: Monsanto, DuPont, John Deere. What's the problem with that? Well, the problem is who owns the data. That is the core and central problem to all of this. Even though the GIS data, the crop data, the livestock data that each farmer generates is out there somewhere, the vendor actually has direct control of it. The farmer does not. Former Undersecretary of Agriculture Bruce Knight wrote, "Increasingly specific data is available today on almost every plot of arable land in the U.S. It's out there in one data bank or another. But who does it belong to?" Blake Hurst wrote in The American, "The individual farmer's data has considerably more value than the average consumer's data. Many farms are fairly large businesses, spending hundreds of thousands on fertilizer and seed and producing millions of dollars in crops. It's not difficult to imagine a smartphone ad arriving within seconds of a farmer encountering weed or insect damage while he's harvesting his crop. Farmers' information is valuable to the companies sponsoring the ads, so farmers should be compensated when their data is sold. Farmers need to protect their data and make sure they bargain wisely as they share data with suppliers and companies who desire access to their information." We've all seen it. How many of you have a Gmail address? Probably the vast majority of you have Gmail or Yahoo or Hotmail. The ads that are derived from that are derived from big data. And by the way, when you sign into that system, suddenly all the email that you type on there doesn't belong to you. It actually belongs to Google or Yahoo or Microsoft. That's why they can sell your data without your permission. Farmers have a much more unique and opportunity, really. The problem is that there's no cost-effective solution for the individual farmer. For one thing, the transport for most of the remote devices largely is cellular data. Cellular data is not as fast as wired data, for one thing, although that technology is kind of bouncing back and forth right now, and it's very expensive. Just yesterday, I went and talked to Verizon, and basically, if I got a Verizon home router for 10 gigabytes of data, that would cost me $100 a month. Now, that doesn't sound like much until you realize that you stream a few YouTube videos, you download this, you download that, 10 gigabytes is gone like that, and it's $15 a gigabyte after that. So cellular data is not necessarily, or satellite data are not necessarily what we need to be looking at. The other part is data collection. The data collection is largely done by third-party commercial services who have a vested interest in the data itself. Last year, farmers paid about $118 an acre for seed corn, up 166% from the inflation-adjusted cost of $45 an acre in 2005. That comes from estimates by a study done by Purdue University. So they're not necessarily using this data to raise the price, but as Dr. DeRucci pointed out, we have an increased risk factor, and the costs are not going anywhere. Where's the data secured at? Who's securing it? Who do you give the release for that data to? Is it just because you signed up for somebody something and it's in the fine print down in the bottom? And how do you take that data that is useful primarily to you, not just to the vendor? How do you take that data and actually share it with other vendors that you might need to share it with? And what subset of that data do they need? How do we retrieve the data if you suddenly decide not to use the XYZ service anymore? Do you just lose it and you have to recreate it from scratch? Studies show that any business who does not regularly back up their data within 24 months of catastrophic failure that leads to data loss, well, guess what? They're out of business. Farmers can't afford that, and neither can America. There is no standardized format for this. The conclusion that we should draw from this is that we need partnerships. Rural telecommunications have the transport and the IT knowledge to build solutions for a private ag cloud. Universities have the research and software development capability as well as education capabilities. Vendors have the financial wherewithal and a vested interest. The goal really here is a cost-effective private solution that ensures the farmer and rancher is the data owner while giving the vendors controlled access. Thanks, and have a great one.